Anytime that we get to engage with educators and our principals, especially that's facing such challenges with return to school. So I'm just glad to be with you. I'm Jennifer Stafford. I'm the director in the Division of Assessment and Accountability Support in the Office of Assessment and Accountability. And I'm going to talk through just several things of kind of how we got to where we are today.
I'm glad it,
so,
what made it go off?
Here we go. So we have been receiving guidance from the U.S. Department of Education, and we've been following their guidance and monitoring what they've been saying. And so in September of last year, the former Secretary of Education, Betsy DeVos, shared in a letter to chief state school officers that states should prepare for spring 21 testing. So that's all that she really put out there, that we should be prepared for that. Didn't give any indication that absolutely that would happen, but just indicated that states should begin to prepare for that. So as Kentucky, we took that as an indication that, okay, we need to continue our progress of development of the state tests. So specifically, K-Prep is a test that we customize. So we took the steps that we wanted to create an assessment that was reduced in number of items and number of time that it would take. Because what we were anticipating is that if schools reopened, and in September of last year, we really didn't know what the future would hold and where we would be today. So we really took the approach to say, okay, if students are back in school, let's make this test as small as we can, and that would still provide valid results, and also be able to be given in a short amount of time, because we really want to reduce the impact and of time that it takes for the student to take the assessment. And so our goal was to make a assessment where we could, this small, and have the least amount of time to take away from instruction. So that was our goals back in September of last year. We also looked at providing the assessment remotely as well. We thought that that could be a possibility. But when we talked through with our vendors, that none of the vendors really supported the remote administration. And as a parent myself, I didn't want to put that burden on parents because that would have been just another thing that would have landed on the students and the parents and the administrators to try to do. So all of those different things went into after we got that initial guidance from the department in September. Then we moved into January. And in January, the U.S. Department of Education released guidance on administration of English language proficiency exams to our English language learners. And at that point in January, they came out with a pretty strong indication that all English learners should be given the English language proficiency exam. So we took that as, again, another indication that the schools, we would be required to do state testing this year. So with that, we continue to prepare for state assessments. With the guidance that came out on February 22nd from the U.S. Department of Education, it did say that states would be required to give their state assessments. So we felt at that point in February that we were prepared for that requirement and to be able to meet the requirement from the U.S. Department of Education with our state test. And again, we've got multiple state tests. We've already begun testing in March 1st, opened the window for access testing. That's our English language learners and the English language proficiency exam. And we do have students testing. At this point, we have about 20%, 25% of the population who have taken that assessment already. Last week, we had the initial ACT test administration, and we did see that about a little over 10%, maybe 12% of the juniors in the state have taken the ACT on that first initial window. So we've got opportunities that we're presenting for students to be able to take those assessments. Those two particular assessments themselves have consequences for the student and their parents. Because with access testing, students are able to demonstrate that they either continue to need supports from ELs for English language services, and for ACT, then they also can demonstrate that they have met benchmarks and can use the ACT test for admission into college or scholarship opportunities. So there's a lot of personal uses for those particular assessments as well. So then the alternate assessment, I know Kevin O'Hare is here with us and will be able to provide information about the alternate and accommodations. So that's kind of the progress that we have been going through since this school year began, in the fact that we thought that the assessment would be required, and indeed that's kind of where we stand right now at this point. Let me pause there, because that's all about testing, and I've got some of the same progress on accountability. But let me stop there and ask if there's any questions about kind of where we are and where we have are currently with state testing. So let me pause. And let me look in chat to see if there's anything in chat that I may have a question or two. Okay,
I didn't in chat, Jennifer.
Yes, hi, good morning, Kevin.
Hey, good morning.
So, okay, so if anybody has questions, you're welcome to open your mic or type in chat. So you're welcome to do that. As you're thinking about your questions about testing, let's talk just a little bit about accountability and talk about where we are and how we've gotten here at this point with school accountability. Again, in that September letter from the department, they said a lot of things about testing, but really didn't say anything about accountability in that initial letter. So how we interpreted that in September of last year is that we should be prepared for testing, but they were just a little bit more uncertain about accountability and accountability measures. So that is, in actuality, where they landed is that the department has invited states to waive accountability measures. So they have put forth a template for states to complete, and it's a very simple template that has check marks that you can mark and narrative boxes that you can put in information. And within that template, it allows for several things to be waived, including accountability and school identification. So those measures of accountability that in the prior system was called like proficiency and separate academic indicator, the school quality and climate survey, the indicator, the growth measure that was used at elementary and middle school previously, all of those measures in the accountability system, we're going to apply for a waiver from all of those things. And those school ratings that in the previous system were stars or descriptive words like proficient or distinguished or needs improvement. In the new system, it looks like it may be colors. All of those measures are going to be waived. I feel fairly confident that those will be waived in the fact that the U.S. Department of Education is inviting states to apply for those waivers. So I would imagine that those would be approved. Also in that waiver is the 95% participation rate. And that is one thing that we're super excited about, that the department has given that opportunity for the 95% participation in the state testing to be waived. We did not feel as a state that we were going to get to 95% participation in our state test. You know, looking at the participation and the rates in which students are staying in remote or virtual learning on non-traditional instruction, looking at those rates, we did not feel like we were going to get anywhere close to 95%. So when the template was released from the department, we were very excited that that 95% participation rate was in there as an option to apply for. So Kentucky will apply for relief from that 95% participation rate, and very confident that we will receive that. Other things that are in that waiver include some of the reporting aspects on the accountability pieces. So with the accountability, all of the accountability pieces will be waived from publicly reporting. So those pieces around accountability, again, will not have to be reported publicly. So where we stand right now is that what we feel like will have to be publicly reported are those assessment results. So the students who are able to get tested this year we feel like will be reported in a couple of ways. First, with participation, and second, with performance. So with your students that are testing in your schools this year, we're going to be required to publicly report those results. And at this point, what we're anticipating is that around performance, that there'll be numbers and percentages of students that scored at the different performance levels of like novice, apprentice, proficient, and distinguished. So you can imagine that there will be in the school report card information about the percentages of student groups that scored at each of those. We also believe that we'll have to report publicly information about participation that will include the students who did participate in state testing and those that did not. So I could imagine that the participation rates will be included of different student demographic groups who did participate and did not by number and percentage. So we do know that there are continued requirements for the school report card. We just don't have all the specific details on what will be reported publicly in the fall. Other things that will have to be reported in the school report card are other things that are generally reported, but those are not about assessment or accountability. So I think I've got some chat here. So the first question, does the waiver for relief of the 95% participation apply to students with disabilities? So that 95% participation rate waiver will be for all students. So all student demographic groups. So the department's not going to hold schools or districts accountable for that participation. So if the direction that we have gone to or provided is that if the student is in school and receiving in-person services, whether it's in a home or hospital setting, if that student has personal interaction in person with school personnel, then that student should be tested. If the student does not receive any type of in-person support, then the student should have the opportunity to test, but is not required to do so. So for example, if Kevin O'Hare is completely virtual, he is not receiving any supports that is in person, then a reasonable dedicated effort should be made to let the student know, let Kevin know and his parents know that there's an opportunity that he could test. He could come in either into the school or be tested in his home or a mutual agreed upon location. But if the student and the parent says, no, thanks, we appreciate it, but we've got too many concerns about the virus, we don't want any interaction with outside people, then they don't have to test with that. So all we're asking for is that those students that are completely virtual, they know about the fact that they have the opportunity, but if they so choose to stay virtual and not take that assessment, then that 95% participation is waived. I've got another question. The waiver will be submitted on behalf of all students and student groups. Oh, that's Kevin. Kevin responded back to that. So yes, that's good. Thank you, Kevin. Yes, it will be submitted on behalf of the state of Kentucky, all that would represent all students. So yes. One thing that I do want to mention as well about, this goes back to testing, is that we have prepared for a social studies field test. That was scheduled last fall in September. It was the 14th through the 18th of September, and that didn't happen. We did not have schools back in person for the great majority. There was not the opportunity in 2020 to get the social studies field test accomplished. So we have developed the social studies field test. It's ready to go. And we have asked district assessment coordinators to complete an interest survey. So the interest survey is to gather information about whether or not, as a district, the district is interested in being part of that. So district assessment coordinators are completing that now. The deadline is Monday, the 22nd. And in that survey, if they say yes, that the district would like to participate, then the district assessment coordinator is committing all of its schools to that field test. All the schools that have the particular grade levels, and for this spring, if we're able to get the social studies field test completed, that field test would be at grades 5, 8, and 11. We have received a number of responses, actually a little over 80 responses, 86 responses. And to date, we've got a fairly good number of yes responses. However, we do have some districts that have opted to decline our invitation for a social studies field test. Now, what we have to make a successful field test is representation across all of our student demographic groups that include race and ethnicity, as well as service groups, as well as high and low performing schools. So we have to have that good representation. The purpose of a field test is to look and see if the items are addressing the content well, and the item responds to the student interacting it with the item as it should, as the student should, if they understand it, if it's presented accurately, whether they can understand the concepts before it ever becomes operational. So the purpose of the field test is to prepare for an operational assessment. And the plan right now is to have an operational social studies test in the spring of 22. So at some point we will have to have a field test, whether it is this spring or next fall. But again, we're hoping that it is a possibility to get the social studies field test included this spring. And again, we've got a survey out right now that district assessment coordinators are responding to. So let me pause there to see if there are any particular questions. I don't see anything else in chat. And everyone's welcome to open your mics and ask your question. I see Kevin.
Jennifer, I think we're a little bit of a quiet group this morning.
Yeah, okay. It is early. It's early. Well, in Central Time, it's a little bit earlier than here.
So maybe if no one has a question right now, we can just move on and kind of turn it over to Kevin, unless you have something else that you want to share. And then if you think of a question at any time, you can jump in, add it in chat, or just let us know that you have a question and it can be addressed.
Absolutely. And I'll hang out here for a while Kevin is presenting, in case that anybody does have anything. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Good morning, Kelly, and good morning to everyone that's joined us this morning. As Jennifer shared, I know it's quite early there, and there in Bowling Green, and so we do appreciate the ability to join you all this morning, and Jennifer done a great job directing or providing some overview of the assessment and the accountability changes and the upcoming options that we have moving forward. So you know, she noted there are several things that's been impacted this year, and you know, assessment accountability is always in that mix. So we want to try to provide you all as much up-to-date information as we possibly can. I think Kelly, that when we last talked, you just wanted to see if anyone had specific questions, I believe, on accommodations for this spring, and then we can just open the floor to those questions if you would like to do that. I can share with you just a couple of things I know for this spring as far as accommodations go, and one might be a question that many of you
when I'm not here.
I think it's my house.
and so some of you may have specific questions about one of the things that we're getting a lot of questions on, and that is the human reader versus the online and how that's checked on an IEP. So I'm gonna start out by saying if any of you remember back in December of 2019, and that was pre-COVID, so you probably are not going to remember that far back. It seems like 30 years ago, but back on December 16th of 2019, the Office of Assessment Accountability, we provided a joint live stream with the Office of Special Education and Narrative Learning. In particular, Sylvia Starkey, the director in the IDEA Monitoring in Progress, was there to represent OCIL, and we talked about the importance of the options for accommodations and how they're identified within a plan. And one of the things that Sylvia focused on was being specific and marking what type of accommodation is going to be utilized on that plan. So she shared that back in December of 2019. And then of course, last year we didn't test with that being right around the time that COVID really hit us strong in the spring of 2020. And so this year being, the first time that's really been implemented strongly, we have been getting several questions. I can only share with you the direction that Sylvia and the Office of Special Education and Early Learning has given us, as they oversee the IEP and the 504 process development. What they have shared with us is in particular, if you have a student that has for reader, they want to know specifically which reader is being identified. So if that elementary student is primarily using a human reader, and that's what's checked on the plan, that's the expectation for testing. If they have online checked or technology, or if they have online checked for the reader, then the expectation will be to utilize text to speech on the assessment this spring. And so that's the guidance that we've been given from them. I think that the same thing with calculator. If they have handheld calculator checked, then that would be the expectation is they would use the handheld calculator. However, if they had online checked, then they would use the expectation would be to utilize the calculator that's provided as part of the online assessment. Speaking of the online assessment, the text to speech this year, that'll be that process will be actually embedded within TestNav, which is the platform that the spring assessment for K-Prep at grades 3 through 8, 10 and 11 would be administered through. So that platform TestNav will actually house the embedded text-to-speech product. Before we had to cross-connect platforms to utilize text help, and so the process this year was actually changed, and we have actually been able to embed the text-to-speech right into the TestNav testing platform. So that's a couple of updates. I guess, Kelly, now if anyone has questions, they're welcome to ask them, or however they would feel most comfortable doing so. I'll give the best answer I can give at this time.
Kevin, I appreciate you and Jennifer getting on here and talking about testing with us. This question might be more for Jennifer. I've heard some horror stories in some other states that have unveiled online testing, just about it's a first day testing, and then the technology doesn't cooperate. The vendor wasn't prepared, and there's a shift to paper pencil testing. Are there any protocols in place or we've learned from others' mistakes so we don't have to go through that same nightmare?
Yes, thanks, Ben. Thanks for coming on. It's good to see you. We do. We have some safety guards in place. Last February, it was the last week of February, first week of March in 2020, we had a quite successful online field test. So across the state, we required all elementary, middle, and high school students in the grades that take reading, math, and writing to participate in the online field test. That was purposeful in the fact that we wanted to not only test the items, but which is the very integral part of that operational assessment development, but the testing of the online system was what we really wanted to see as well. So we required all of the students to participate in across all of those grade levels. And it went quite well. I mean, it really did. We had our Office of Education Technology staff. They were granted access to the platforms and analyses that Pearson has. So we could monitor the number of students taking the tests and the stress on the systems in the Pearson system. They also had analysis and real-time metrics that they looked at on broadband and bandwidth and the capacities in each district. It was really quite interesting to be able to look at the amount of bandwidth that it was taking. And at no point during that field test did we get anywhere close to being at a critical stage where Kentucky could not support testing, online testing. I think where we have other states have gone more quickly into online testing than we have. They weren't as prepared as Kentucky is. And Kentucky, we've got a great infrastructure. We have great support from our Office of Education Technology. And also we learned from that field test, right? We learned, that game bar has to be disabled. The instant messages on those student computers, that has to be shut off or it's not going to work. So we learned a lot. I really feel like we are prepared for online testing in Kentucky. I'll also note too that the TestNav program that will be utilized with the K-Prep system is the same system that ACT uses for ACT testing. So at high school, we've had, as I mentioned earlier, we've had a very successful administration of the ACT last week. And a good majority of those students were testing online with that same platform. And we ran into the test bar, we ran into that instant messages program, but we're able to overcome those. And I really feel like Kentucky is in a good situation for online testing. Not that, there won't be obstacles. I mean, and I'm not saying that everything's going to be perfect because individual students and individual schools may encounter situations that may need to regroup and try again. But and I remember back in 2012 when we did the end of course online for the first time at the high school level. I remember there was a cable line cut. They were digging, there was a construction crew dug and cut the line, and it knocked out about 5 districts. And the best laid plans are what you can do, but you can't factor in construction crews. And we also had back in 2012 we had a squirrel eat through a line that went through, and so that impacted that one particular school. So I think, again, we're well prepared, but there will be circumstances that will be unforeseen.
I appreciate the explanation. I used to teach in Tennessee, but there's a reason I've moved back to Kentucky because things are thought out, a little better. So I appreciate you guys. Thanks.
we're having that squirrel investigated still to this day. We think that he was working for one of those students in particular, and so he is still that trial is still ongoing. So thanks, Jennifer. That was a very, very, very good explanation, and she's exactly right. We have had a very high success rate up to this point with online testing through the field test and the platform, the TestNav system that Jennifer noted, and that I talked briefly about with the accommodation side of things, is one that our vendors have been successful with in other states as well. So we definitely are encouraged by the results we've seen thus far. But as she also noted, that doesn't mean that, you know, we couldn't have a situation arise. And if that does, we are very, very closely connected with the OET and staff there, as well as our contract vendors, that we would make sure to work with each district on a case-by-case basis to get that resolved as soon as possible. So very good question, and we appreciate that.
Kevin, we had a little question too, when you were talking about the accommodations that are marked. In Infinite Campus, for instance, with the calculator, we have 3 options. We have to choose one. So if we choose for a student to use a handheld calculator, but then during the test, they decide they would rather use the Desmos calculator, is that acceptable, or do we have to force the kid to use the handheld because it's marked on the IEP? How are we going to handle that, since we can't mark both and give them the option that way?
Right. And that's a good question, Daryl. I can only give the answer that I've been given, if that makes sense. And the direction that we've been given through Office of Special Education and Early Learning is that they need to utilize the one they've been using throughout the year. So if they've been using that handheld all year long, that's the one they should continue to use on the test. And, you know, in reality, if they've been training with the handheld, then the online is going to be a little bit different for them if they've not accessed it. Now, you know, we're probably well aware that these kids, if they've done the practice test, they probably had some access to the online version as well, definitely. But the guidance that we've been given is they need to utilize the one they've been using throughout the year and marked on their plan.
So Kevin, good morning. It's Kelly Davis.
Okay.
And I understand what you're saying based on Daryl's question, but there are some students with IEPs that it's appropriate to mark that they need to have options of both, maybe like the handheld and the online calculator, or really I'm thinking more in the context of the reader. There are some students who you're transitioning to be able to do the voice to text reader, but they're still at the beginning of the year. Maybe they still need a human reader because of the significance of their disability. And so I think some districts are feeling limited by the inability to, I understand that, you know, they have to use the accommodation that they've been practicing most of the year. I get that. But for some kids, it's not a lot, but there are some kids, they actually are using both types because, you know, part of the goal is to help students be able to move away from their accommodations as they grow older and they become more proficient. But you don't want to just put them on one that they're not ready for. So some kids need both at the beginning, which is why there was some guidance given last fall that said, put the one that you're going to work them toward in the top box, and in the other box or in the comments, write this other kind of shift that you're going to do, this additional modification that you're making to support them, to give them that scaffold basically. And now all the districts are being told, nope, you can only use the one at the top. So the guidance has been a little messy. And I actually just asked one of my directors to hop on, who is kind of having some conversations with OSIL about this. So she may want to unmute and talk about it as well.
Yeah, and along those lines too, Kelly, we're doing the same thing with the calculator. We provide them with the handheld calculator, but we do several activities through Desmos where they're using the online calculator with their peers. So these kids, they're using both in the class, and then to kind of stick them with one during testing is not necessarily the most fair thing to do. With the calculator, I guess we can mark other and put that they could use either, but there's not that option with the reader. So.
And that's one of the things too that we've had that question on, Daryl. That's very, very, several have asked that question. And like I said, I'm only, I'm sharing the guidance that was given to me. And Kelly, your points were very, very good points, very good reasons behind that. But that, like I said, that's the information that we've been shared and how that plan is developed and the process for that. And coming from a special education background before I came to KDE, I definitely understand that there's the variables that are necessary for student progression and instruction as it occurs throughout the year. So don't think that I'm disagreeing at all, because I'm not. As I noted, that's probably something that, Kelly, that you all, when you talk with the special ed directors and that group that works through OCL, that might be something that you all continue to work with them on, and because they would be the ones that would make the final call on changing the IEP format.
Well, so we have, and there's been a lot of ongoing conversation. And I guess my frustration is that it's supposed to be, and I know you're just the messenger here, you're not, and I get it, but it's an individualized education plan. And it seems that this kind of putting this in this box this way is limiting the ability of the ARC to determine what the student actually needs to be successful. So I feel very frustrated that the districts are being sort of put into this box of the one choice, because at the end of the day, if you need a handheld calculator, or I don't even know what that's called, Desmos, is that what you said, Daryl? Whatever it is, this other, it's still a modified type of calculator. So why can't it just be a choice that you need a modification in calculator, you need a modification for reader, you need a modification for scribe, or whatever it is? Why does it have to be something that's identified as one specific thing? Because that's really not supporting the students at the level they need to be supported. And again, I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but there's a lot of frustration about this. And we're not really getting anywhere with conversations with the Office of Special Education.
And that would be the ones though that would have to make that decision. I don't mean that in a way of trying to shift the focus here, because that's not what where it's a special education instructional, or the focus there being developed through the special education guidelines and stuff. We obviously couldn't come in and say, we're gonna shut this down because this is that. We can't personally say we don't agree, or what I mean there is we can't personally say we're going to make this shift. We have to weigh in with those, because they, that is the field that they represent. And we want to show that level of collaboration, and not saying that we disagree with anything you're saying there. I think it is important that we do continuously identify that students are focusing more in one area and not, not making adjustments or changes, around test time and stuff. And that's always been an area that's been concerning in the past. And so I think that has a lot of reasoning behind it too. We can't just shift for testing purposes. We have to shift because progression's being made. And I think that's the same thing that you're mentioning and Daryl mentioned too, is, we're making adjustments as we go, because that student is showing those levels of progress that's beneficial to them, and it's going to show success for them moving forward. And so not disagreeing with any of those statements, but in the grand scheme of things, we do have to, focus on the guidance and the direction that we've been given through Associate Commissioner Hilton and the group there at OCL. I've seen Jennifer jump on. Jennifer, do you have anything to add?
Yes, I just wanted to echo. I appreciate the fact that Kelly and Daryl, you bringing this to our attention, and we do work well with Sylvia Starkey, and we work closely with her as well as Greta. And so we'll take these concerns. We clearly understand, and Kevin's been able to articulate them back to that, and we will take these concerns to them and have further discussions with the special ed office so that the guidance is not confusing, that it is effective communications with you all, because that's not what we want to do. We don't want to be confusing. We want it to be understood. We want it to be in the best interest of the students.
I don't think that it's confusing
Oh,
necessarily,
yeah.
but I just think it's not, I think that people are feeling limited by it. And I
Okay.
hear what Kevin's saying about that you can't, and that there is, specific regulations about changing accommodations at the, right before testing, because,
Mhm.
that you can't do that because that kind of could be that you're trying to improve a student's performance by giving them an accommodation that they don't regularly use. And I get that. That's not really what this is about.
Okay.
The recommendation that was made, I think early on, was just have an arc. Just have another arc every time the student is progressing and can move toward, a different accommodation. And I think that part of the frustration for districts is that just having an arc is a huge commitment of time and resources on the part of a school. And if you have to just have an arc every time you need to make one small change to the IEP, that's not, and I know there's laws around it. I get all that. That's what I do all the time. But I just feel like we should be able to come to some kind of a mutually beneficial way to be the most supportive of students. So, and I'll be quiet now. Sorry about all that.
No, thank you. No, don't be sorry. Thank you so much for clarifying.
No, and absolutely. No, don't ever apologize, Kelly. And we definitely will take these questions back, or concerns back, and share them with their cohorts there in OSEAL, and continue to have this conversation. Continue to have this
Absolutely.
conversation. We had a
Thank
question
you
in
all.
chat.
I think that Josh wants Kelly to get to come to Frankfurt.
I absolutely. Kelly knows she's
Please.
invited. Always invited. You too, Josh. All right. Is there any further questions around the accommodations? I kind of thought that one might be the one that would get the most conversation around. 'Cause, I mean, it's not the first time we've heard it, and we continue to discuss it. But like I said, we'll continue to share these questions and concerns with Sylvia specifically, and their team to continue to hopefully make progression in that way. So, anyone else have questions? I see Kim's joined. Kim Johnson. Hi, Kim. You may be on a call. I know she's a busy lady too. So.
Good morning. No, I just couldn't find my unmute button.
Good morning, Kim. How are you doing?
I'm great. Thank you. I was just joining in for the discussion on accommodations. I do have a meeting set up with Sylvia on Monday just to talk about some of our concerns and being able to utilize the workaround that that we were given from CGIC in the fall to see if we could use those workarounds during the testing. So hopefully we'll be able to solve that that issue on Monday.
Absolutely. All right. Any other questions around testing or around the spring assessments for students with disabilities, or students just general assessment without disabilities, or the alternate assessment access? Anything that we can try to provide any type of updates or guidance to the best of our ability? All right. Well, as always, we appreciate Greg and all of our cooperatives for the hard work that they do in each and every district. We understand the times we're in and all the continued uncertainty, and we do see some positive things coming, and we hope to continue to move forward in those directions. I know that you're all welcoming students back in more in person, and some of you may be fully in person now or hybrid to some level. But students are starting to return back to school, and we definitely understand that transition is, they've not been to school, some of them for over a year, and so that's a big swing for them, and so we definitely understand that, and to have testing coming on top of that, we just want you to know we're here for you, and we're here to provide any type of guidance or assistance that we can in order to make things run as smoothly as possible. So, Jennifer, do you have anything else to add?
No, I just really appreciate everyone and the hard work that goes on during this time. It's been such a change that we've all had to encounter and we've all had to face. And just I was talking with someone yesterday afternoon, and just the amount that educators have been asked to change and to pivot on continuously updated guidance. I mean, it's just been amazing. And I just thank you all so much for all the efforts. It's been amazing this past year, and we continue to face challenges, but I really do feel like the end is in sight. That there's the light at the end of the tunnel, and it's not a train that's going to run over us. So you all, thank you again. Hang in there, and if there's any support that we can provide you, Kelly, we will go back and we will talk with Sylvia, and we'll make those contacts so that when you do get to Frankfurt, that road has been paved for you.
All right, so Jennifer and Kevin, once again, just thank you all so much for carving out some time to be with our principals this morning in this network meeting. I think it's very important for them to be able to hear information firsthand from you all and from KDE, and just to receive clarification and guidance moving forward. So we appreciate that. If I have any additional questions that are sent to me, then I'll just reach out to you all and we'll get those shared out. But once again, thank you so much. I appreciate you, and you all have a wonderful day. Okay.
Thank you. You
Thanks,
too.
Kelly. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
All right. So we're going to transition now. I'm going to turn it over for just a few minutes to Dr. Savannah Denning. She's popped on here to share some summer support opportunities from GREC. And so I'm just going to turn it over to Savannah, and she's just going to share with you some great things going on that we can provide for you this summer.
Thanks, Kelly T. And good morning to everyone. Sorry, I popped in. We've got lots of other virtual stuff going on, as I know that you all do too. I'm going to share sort of on behalf of the SPED and the Gen Ed team at GREC. And I'd like to invite Mr. Fleener, Dr. Davis, Dr. Costello to jump in at any time. And essentially, our teams have kind of paired up at GREC to think about how we can best support districts with some summer support, and understanding that teachers are just taxed right now and charged with having kids back full-time in the building. And they are just working frantically to make things as normal as possible for their kiddos for the remainder of the year. So understanding that context, GREC is working to design and plan for summer school for our districts and for our schools. So we are offering summer school packages for grades 3 through 5 in math and in literacy. And essentially, we want to be able to deliver ready-to-go kits that have all of the materials, all of the lesson planning, all of the copies, all of the manipulatives and tools that teachers will need to run a high-quality summer school program to support students in the summer. So there's a lot of flexibility within that. Right now, we are planning for whole group instruction and also some small group instruction. So we are continuing to focus on grade level content, but we're also providing some small group support for students who may need just an extra layer of scaffolding to maybe reach those grade level goals. We are working 3 through 5 right now, as we've said, and we are using the priority standards that have been provided from Achieve the Core. And that is something that lots of districts and schools have already kind of been pulling together and reviewing, and we want to kind of stay aligned with that. I'm going to drop a link to the flyer in the chat box that has some more details that I may not get to today. But essentially, we want to really sort of inspire and provide some incentives for teachers to teach summer school. We are designing our instruction really to be sort of operationalized by one gen ed teacher and then a co-teacher of some sort. Now that may be a special education teacher, an aide, but really tag teaming that with groups of no more than 25 students per grade level. We will provide training to these teachers, and we will provide continued support. Right now, we have 2 pathways for you to take advantage of this summer school option. You can just buy the instructional materials and purchase that package from GREC, or you can purchase the instructional materials and all of the hands-on consumables and manipulatives to go with it, because we want this summer school design to be a model of what quality instruction could look like going forward in the fall. So we want to provide enough of those materials and manipulatives for teachers who are teaching summer school to take back to their classroom and use that in the fall. So we want to sort of sustain this support more than just through summer school. And we have some really exciting news that I think just firmed up this morning. Dr. Davis has been working with Goalbook, which is a program that works with teachers and special education teachers to really find pathways to meet student needs. And we are going to pair that program license with our summer school package to add another layer of support for our summer school teachers and let that be part of our ongoing support. So teachers who are going to teach summer school will receive all of the materials they'll need. They'll receive manipulatives and all of the stuff that goes with summer school. And then additionally, they'll receive a license for this program that they can use for the entire next school year with their students in the classroom. So like I said, the flyer I dropped in the chat box, this will be changing. So if you go back to this link later, it is a live link to our Google Flyer. So you may see some changes. We may have some more updates as we are trying to be really responsive to district needs as more requests are coming in. So I would like to invite you to reach out to me or Dr. Davis or Dr. Costello if you've got questions about summer school or ideas about summer school. We would be happy to brainstorm through that with you or answer some of those questions. And then both of those team leads, if you all want to chime in and cover any of those bases that I may have missed out this morning, I'd love for you to.
Good morning, everybody. I'll jump in here real quick. Thank you, Savannah. Hello to all my principal friends and colleagues, and my Warren County buddies. We're going to have to work on some of your neighbors down the road and get some more people back in on these meetings, but it's good to see you all. And I'll just echo what was said earlier. I know it's been a long, right now, 370 or so days, I guess, that you all have been working really hard to try to pivot and make adjustments on the fly, day to day, week to week, sometimes minute to minute. So thank you all for what you're doing. Yeah, I just want to add a couple of comments. I put our email addresses there in the chat box. So if you want to reach out to one of us, and if you have more questions, then that will make that a little bit easier for you. I just want to say one thing about the packages. We're really working right now. One thing that keeps coming up in conversation is teachers don't need to get something that's half-baked. They need to get something that's ready to go. And so we have worked really hard. Our teams we've met several times, and we want this to be something that they just open up, everything's there, and it's simple. Now we want to provide some training too, but we don't want you to get this and then have teachers have to spend a day or two really working hard to prepare. Not that they could just walk right in necessarily and start that morning. Obviously, they need to look over it and have our training, but we want to make it really ready to go. So a lot of work's going into it to make it that way. Also want to say too, we have had some instructional leaders from districts reach out to us from about 10 or 12 districts. So it could be that someone from your district office has already contacted us about implementing this, but they may not have communicated that to you yet. So it's probably a good idea to contact Kelly or I to see if your district may already be working on it, rather than you kind of take this on your own and get going with it and then find out, my district instructional leader was already planning on buying this for all of us. Check with one of us first and then, or check with your instructional leader and see if it's something that they're pursuing before you maybe take a lot of time to pursue this on your own.
All right. Thank you all for sharing. Kelly Davis, did you have anything else you wanted to chime in? I didn't want to cut you off if you did. No. Okay.
I'm good.
All right. So thank you so much, Savannah, for hopping on and sharing that information with us. Dan, before I move on here, I might go ahead and let you, did you want to say anything about Greg Ed? I think you were going to maybe share about our writing contest that we've got going on here at Greg. So why don't you go ahead and do that? And then I'm going to turn it over to our fearless leader, Mr. Fleener, for a few moments.
Sounds good. Well, yeah, thank you so much for letting me jump in here again. I just posted another thing into the chat box, and that is our resiliency writing contest. And this is going on through the end of the month. And I'm just going to tell you, if you've got a 4th grade classroom in your building, chances are really good that somebody in your building is going to win this contest, because we don't have a lot of participants at 4th grade or 7th grade. It's open to 4th, 7th, and 10th grade. We've got several in 10th, but there's still a chance for you to participate over the next couple of weeks or so. We may push the deadline back just a little bit. But I'm telling you, if you've got a 4th grade classroom or a 7th grade classroom, you can talk to your teachers about either doing this, and we don't want to add anything to your plate. I know teachers are trying to rush and get through content and things right now, and they got testing on their mind. We don't want this to be something that's a stressor. This is something that's optional, something they can do. You can ask your teachers to participate in this, have their kids participate, or you can just put it out to your families, put it in the newsletter and say, hey, if your kid's really into writing, this is a great opportunity for them to interview someone. The thought behind this is interview someone who went through a challenging time and what they learned about it. We want them to interview an adult who maybe went through, they were in Vietnam War, or maybe they had some link to 9/11 and that was a challenging time for them, or maybe just a personal thing in their life. How did they overcome that? Kids right now, this is the first big thing that they're having to deal with. I'd say 90% of kids, 95% of kids, the pandemic is something that they're going to tell their kids about one day. And they're going to say, here's how we struggled through that. Here's how I came out on the other end a better person. So we want kids to go to someone in their family or someone they know and say, what's something pre-pandemic that you had to go through that was hard, and what were the lessons that you learned from it? So it's a super simple writing contest. We just love to have more participation. So again, especially 4th and 7th grade, chances are really good that your kids are going to do great, but 10th grade, it's open as well. And I put the link in there. The other thing I want to share with you is Greg Ed. I'm always going to be talking about Greg Ed. If you see me in any context, definitely with Greg and maybe otherwise, I'm going to be talking about Greg Ed. I just put those 2 links on the Twitter, in the chat as well. First of all is our Twitter link. So you can go there for the most up-to-date information. We'll be putting, I usually tweet something every few days, 2 or 3 times a week. And there's our website as well. We've got 2 more informational sessions for our fall cohorts, and those are next Thursday, a week from today, and April 15th. Encourage your teachers and even yourself. I've got a principal right now who got his master's in school administration, but he doesn't have a rank 1. So he's in Greg Ed and he's going to get a rank change as a principal. I've got a principal in Warren County who did the same thing. She went through the administration program when it was a master's program. She doesn't have a rank 1 and she's interested in getting in Greg Ed. It is a 2-year program that's job embedded, it's collaborative. There are so many great things about it that give you a lot of flexibility. I know you're thinking, I'm an administrator, don't have time, or, teachers may think, oh gosh, I don't have time. We want to make this work with you. We want to give you a lot of flexibility to make it job embedded, make it make sense, and give you an opportunity to get that rank change in 2 years. So take a look at our Twitter, take a look at our website, and please pass that along to your teachers, especially if you think someone may be interested in pursuing it, if you've heard them talking about going the university route. Obviously, there's a lot of great things, and all of us have been through a university graduate program, but we think we have something that's different, and it's an opportunity that some people may find more fitting to their needs. And so we want to promote that and give people a chance to check it out. If they'll get on again next Thursday, the link will be popping up on Twitter 2 or 3 times between now and then. So just have them check that out, push that out to your teachers, encourage them to do it. Kelly, thank you.
Hey, Dr. Koslow, I just want to say I have 2 teachers enrolled in Grec Ed, and it's been a win-win for everyone because they, as part of their program, they're working on some of our special ed practices here, and it lines up right with our vision. So it's just been great. So I recommend it. And Mr. Fleener, I do want you to know that Dr. Koslow is known for wearing like 3-piece suits, and I noticed that's not happening right now. So please don't let him lower his standards. I'm just asking that. Thanks.
He is slacking on the dress code, Ben. I may need you to come over and have a talk with him. Also, checks in the mail, Ben, on that Grec Ed recommendation. Dan will be sending that to you next week.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah, Ben, thank you. And that is a big part of this. We want your teachers and we want people in the districts to find things that they may think, well, I need to work on this and need to do this. They can implement this as part of their program, and they can do this as part of Grec Ed. It's learning as you're doing, it's job embedded, and that's part of what makes this so cool. We've really focused on making it flexible and making it real and making it something that you can use, and not just something arbitrary that you're going after just because you got to take these classes or you got to do these things just to get this degree or this rank change. We want it to be really, really useful to you, something that you can use today or something that you can use to prepare for your career down the road. Appreciate you, Ben. I'll pay you later.
All right, so I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Fleener now, and he's going to talk to you a little bit about some legislative work that's going on, and then if you have any questions for him, feel free.
Don't sign off yet just because Kelly said legislative stuff. We're not starting with that, okay? I want to follow up Dan, Dr. Costello. I really appreciate his passion for Grec Ed, and that is heartfelt. And I'm getting to participate in that with Katie Embry from Warren County Schools. I'm helping with the PE cadre. So we're doing some work with a few folks on that, and that group as well. So I love being a part of it. It is job embedded, it is real, and people appreciate it. So sometime this spring, I think I'm going to give you this challenge as a leader in your building, okay? So here's how it kind of works. The parallel is there's a lot of stuff you all don't have time to pay attention to that you would ask your central office or your superintendents to pay attention to, right? Everybody's with me on that because you got the day-to-day. So if you parallel that down to your teachers, there's a lot of stuff your teachers don't have time to pay attention to, and it's your job to help them get that information because they don't have time to get it on a day-to-day basis. So one of them would be Grec Ed, or just in general, you talking to your teachers on your team because you're their coach and saying to them in your maybe in your evaluation meetings at the end of the evaluation meeting this spring, hey, what are you doing thinking forward about rank changes? You're in this for the long haul. You're in this for your family. What are you doing thinking about what's your thought about rank change? And then that opens up the conversation, and you can say to them, hey, because in some cases they may need to go through a college and university, but for some of them that don't know, Grec Ed might be a wonderful possibility for them to consider a rank change and do it. And some of the things that Ben was talking about this morning. So I think that's something you need to do for your folks, is make sure that happens. On the writing contest, Dan did not mention there are cash prizes, or at least I missed that part if he did. Your students can win, I'm not direct cash, but it's going to be like gift cards. It'll be just the same as cash. We can do that here at Grec. And there are not many of any entrants at the 4th and 7th grade level. We love the idea. Dr. Doug Reeves, when he spoke on January the 19th, I don't know if any of you were in on that session, one thing I took away from it was that nonfiction writing is one of the most powerful teaching tools we can use with our students. And I know when Dan said, well, I know you're worried about getting ready for the test and everything. And I saw a few of you nod your heads, or at least some of you, I can't see your faces, but I'm sure you were nodding your heads. And that's like oh no, it's testing stress again, it's coming back. Have your teachers just take the time to feel free to do something like this nonfiction writing project. And I promise your student will benefit. That's one of the things we figured out during COVID among many, is that we got to teach what really matters to our students. You know, sometimes we are still caught up in the pressure of having to cover every standard. If anything COVID has done to us, it's made us think about what's most important to teach, because we're not getting to all of it anyway. Even in a non-COVID time, we're not, but certainly in this past year, we're not. So that's my take on that. I love the idea of them interviewing someone. I think it's a community connection, whether it's their uncle or some other teacher at the school or somebody in the community that they interview. I think that generation, those folks can teach them about resiliency so that those students can apply it to their lives. And just a reminder, I know Dan said this, but we're not trying to have them interview somebody about the last 12 months. That's not a topic. They've lived through that, the students have. We're trying to get them to go to someone who's lived through a time back in the past to use that for reflection, so that the students can then kind of apply that to their current situation about people getting through tough times and coming out on the other side. All right. I love seeing your faces this morning. I understand why Rex Booth and Daniel Harlan and Stephen Murphy wouldn't want to turn their cameras on. Nobody wants to see that this early in the morning. But for the rest of you, if you get a chance, you know, when we do these meetings, we love to see faces. It's really hard. I know you're working on several things. I'm looking at my other screen a lot this morning, so it may look, you know, if you got double screens or whatever, but whenever you have these meetings, if you can see faces, we can see your faces. We love it. Rex, Stephen, Daniel, just keep that camera off. I understand. I can give those folks digs because I know them all. And then some of the others without their camera on, I can't speak for that. I come to you this morning from high above the court at the Final Four. You know, we can come in this Zoom world, we can virtually be anywhere when we come to these Zoom meetings. So it is March Madness. I don't know if you got your bracket filled out yet. We're working on that feverishly here at Greg. Now, I hope your teams win. My team didn't make it this year, but also my favorite team didn't make it, the Wildcats. But my least favorite two teams in the world, the Louisville Cardinals and the Duke Blue Devils, didn't make it either. So I took some solace in that. Some of you that are Louisville fans, I'm sorry. And if you're a Duke fan, we need to talk after. We need to do like an intervention after this meeting. So, all right. Legislature, I had to come to it eventually. There's a lot of stuff going on. I know you don't have time to pay attention to it. I didn't realize how little I paid attention to it when I was an administrator, not until I became the superintendent in Russellville in 2017 did I really start to even focus on what was going on at the legislative level in Kentucky, how it could affect me, my adult team members, my students. And I really have come to understand it better in the last 4 years. I don't say that I love it still. Some people love it. My friend Paul Mullins in Logan County Schools, superintendent there, loves to track it and what's going on with the bill and where's it at and who's voting yes and who's voting no. And even though I'm a social studies teacher by trade, I don't love it like that. But there's a lot of legislation and there's a couple of pieces that will affect you and your teachers, and you may want to be able to share this with them and or your students. The first one is Senate Bill 128. Who knows what Senate Bill 128 is even about? I'd like some audience participation here. I'm engaging in wait time is what I'm doing. I'm trying.
Is it the open borders? Is it
Okay,
the
so
open
that
borders?
that one's 563. It's so funny you start talking about these. No, that one's number such and such. That one's House Bill 563, which I'll talk about third. I may not talk about that at all today. It's complicated and takes a while, and some of you may like fall asleep while I'm talking about it. But 128 is affecting students. I see Rex Booth's microphone come on. Tell me about that, Coach.
Well, I was going to say that I thought 128 was the one about the teacher retirement, but I guess I've got the number wrong too.
Okay, so that's good. I'm talking about teacher retirement next. That's 258. That's House Bill 258. So Senate Bill.
I knew it had an 8 in it.
Is 128 the supplemental year?
Oh, thank you, David. Good job. Senate Bill 128 is the AKA the red shirt bill, AKA the do-over bill. I don't know what it's being called recently, but somebody referred to it as the red shirt bill a couple of weeks ago. I have put the actual bill in the chat. The first one says SB 128 right before it says PDF. That one's 3 pages. The next one is HB 258, which is the teacher retirement new tier that will take effect January 1st, 2022. That one's 117 pages. I'm not sure you actually want to try to read all those, but the one about the red shirt bill is pretty simple. It's 3 pages. I can give it to you in less than 3 pages. We'll call it the red shirt bill just for sake of ease. It has passed both chambers. I'm gonna share my screen. I think I can share it. Are you all able to see my screen? Okay. It's only 3 pages, but basically the big section says, notwithstanding any passing grades a public student may receive during this year, any student enrolled at Kentucky Public School in grades K through 12 requests to use this coming year as a supplemental school year. Now, for those of you that do K through 8, you're like, how is this even different than anything we've ever done before? It's what we do every year. We offer this. It is more affecting 9 through 12, and it was just 9 through 12 to start with, but then they backed it up and said it's also K through 12. This gives some schools, like some elementary schools, some cover, or some parents a chance to say to an elementary school, I really want Johnny to do 3rd grade again. I just feel like it wasn't, this year was just so crazy. I want him to come back and do 3rd grade again, that the parent could request that as well. You know, some schools are like, well, we want to keep moving them along. So those of you that are in the lower grades, what you got to think about, whether it's the red shirt bill or not, is you got to think, I know you are, because I talked to the middle school principal in Russellville the other day, and they've got they're not even calling them retention numbers this year, but they've got their potential supplemental year students already kind of laid out. And at Russellville, which has 240 students at the middle school, so that's 80 students a grade, it's a small school, they've got like 15 students that might consider doing 7th grade again. So you start doing percentages, let's keep it simple. Let's say they had 20 students out of 80 that want to do 7th grade again. Well, that's an extra teacher at 7th grade next year, because, or it depends on how many 6th graders come up and all those things. So this does affect you, whether, you know, even Rex at the 5th, 6th grade in Emerson County, he's thinking about FTEs and teachers and how many he normally has. Well, what if at the 5th grade, he only has 2 students that want to do 5th grade over, so the other 5th graders move on up to 6th grade, but at 6th grade, he has 20 students that want to do it over, and then maybe that's a big number. Now he's thinking about different teacher, you know, numbers. So this is affecting everyone. I know you probably, all of you should have gotten your initial count on March 1st, your initial teacher count, you know, and then you've got till May 1st for that to be a final. You got your tentative number on March 1st, and you get your final number by May 1st. So you're already thinking about it, but this definitely affects what you do in your classes, and it affects students. And so at the high school level, basically, a student could do over a year. As far as athletics goes, they could have 5 years to play high school sports. They can't, they still have to be in line with the age requirements. So a real example is my son Avery, who's a junior in Russellville. He will be 18 this summer in July. So he'll go into this senior year this fall as an 18-year-old. If he wanted to do the supplemental year, he could do it, but he would turn 19 before his 5th year of high school, and therefore he wouldn't be eligible to play sports in his 5th year of high school. I don't know if that works the same for like band students, if the KEMA does the same thing KHSAA does, but I'm going to speak to high school now. I've spoken to K through 8. So at the high school level, different folks feel different ways about this. They feel like there could be some unintended consequences. I get that. But in the end, I always come back to kids. And if a student says to a high school, hey, I feel like I need 1 more year before y'all unleash me on the world or push me out into the world, I think we got to figure out a way to make that happen for them and try to help them. You know, I've heard ideas like, hey, I'm a senior, I can go back and take a bunch more dual credits at a much lower cost, and then go to college a year later and be on down the road some more in my college career and have made a good economic decision, and get to go play with my band members in this fall when they have like actual marching band competitions again, which they missed last fall. I got other students saying, you know, I'm a welding student and I had to do virtual welding all year, and it's hard to become a welder virtually. And so I want to go back this next year and I want to get back in my program and complete my welding certification before I finish high school. So I think the advantages outweigh the disadvantages. This is just my opinion. I know that some superintendents and some principals at the high school level are saying, ooh, this could be complicated, and it could be, but I don't think in the end, again, just my opinion, that many students would take advantage of this. A lot of them will just be ready to go this spring. But for the ones who feel like they want to take advantage of it, I'm glad that the bill got passed by both chambers. Now, what happens next is the Governor Beshear has time to veto it or not veto it. I don't think he will do a veto on this. Again, my opinion. But he only has a certain time to do that. If he doesn't after a certain time, it goes into law. Even if he did veto it, the two chambers could choose to override that veto with a constitutional majority. In the Senate, they have 38 members, so that would be 20-18. They'd have to have 20 votes to override his veto. And in the House, they have 100 members, so they'd have to have 51 votes to override his veto. I haven't dug in to know that he might veto this. I don't think he will, because he's going to say, I'm about students. It's kind of one of those bills that it's hard to get up and say, I'm against it, because as an educator, you get painted as being against students, and we don't want to be in that place. I don't want to be in that place. But so that's 128. Any questions about that?
Bart, I don't have a question, but I just wanted to throw out there, I'm not sure if we have any high school principals on the call today, but if you are a high school principal, and you would like for me to forward an email strand about students with disabilities who may be the ones that would normally be in your school till age 21. There's been some questions that have been asked of the Department of, or the Office of Special Education about what that's going to look like. And they don't know yet because it's just all so new, but I would be happy to forward that email strand to Kelly and let her forward that to anybody who would like to just kind of be kept abreast of what they're saying so far about those students, because the question is about whether students who would age out at 21 would be able to stay till 22, or if your district allows students to stay till age 22, if they would be allowed to stay to age 23. So just put in the chat or unmute and let me know if you want that, and I'll go ahead and send it to Kelly anyway, and then she'll have it if anybody wants it.
And Philip, great question. Would an 8th grader who repeats take 8th grade classes again or take high school courses? So I didn't say this a while ago. Each district, I'm going to roll on down here. Okay, I'm reading from section 3 here, line 27. A student that wants to take advantage of this has to submit the request to the school district by May 1st. Then the school district, on line 2 of this page 2, a school district has to approve or not approve or reject requests on an individual basis by June 1st. No, I'm sorry. You can approve or reject, but you have to determine by June 1st whether you will accept all or not. So I think that's what that's saying is, if Evanston County gets 25 students that want to repeat, want to do a supplemental year, let me phrase it that way, the Evanston County School District could decide by June 1st whether they're even going to entertain this or not. So they could say, no, we're not doing it at all, and the 25 students don't have that opportunity. Or they could say, we're going to entertain it, and the students have that opportunity. Then after that, they could say, based on individual student requests, which of those 25 they're going to allow to do that. I think I'm interpreting that correctly. And then the local board shall notify KDE and submit the plan along with any request for waivers for any regulations by June 16th. This is going to happen pretty fast. So it may be that you as a principal, under the guidance of what your superintendent central office want to do is start to explain to parents, because they don't quite understand it either, what it means. So back to your question, Philip, I don't know. I think the 8th grader in that case, in my mind, if there's high school classes they could go on and take, they could do that, but that's complicated in some cases because now they're going to another building. But are they coming back and playing 8th grade academic team, or are they going to the 8th grade dance? I don't know. I think it was originally intended that a senior that's looking at this year could just do their senior year again. But then it got to be like, well, what if a sophomore felt like they had a just misplaced year and really want to do that again? Some districts could say, oh, you're an 8th grader and you want a supplemental year, then you're staying in 8th grade and you're repeating the same classes. And that's what you got to do to be an 8th grader and have an extra year. They could say that as a district. I don't know that I would. I mean, maybe I would. I haven't dug into it to think about all those particulars. Philip, that's a great question. What district are you all with, Philip?
Greene County.
Yeah. So I'm sure that Will and that the team there is probably, because Will brought this up at our GREC superintendent's meeting, that they polled the students in Greene County schools, I think, right?
Well, the high school. I don't think our students, not at the middle school level.
Okay. So at the high school level, I think they polled them and they got about a 3 to 5% of students that would be interested in doing a supplemental year. So that gives you some idea that about 1 in 20 would maybe be interested or something like that. If it was 5%, it'd be 1 in 20.
And do we know if KHSAA, will they weigh in on, I mean, I know that they can't, the age restrictions, that's not on the table, but for high school, I wonder if they will. I think it just gets more complicated when you're talking about middle school students. And I wonder if they will speak on, is that, I think right now there's a cap on a 15-year-old. Will that remain in place, or is that?
Got it. Well, that cap on age moved down to middle school. I get you. This paragraph on line 22 and 23, and I haven't committed all this to memory. I'm just reading some of the words we're talking about here that you said. For a student in 9 through 12, utilizing the year as a supplemental year, the student has 5 consecutive calendar years of eligibility from the date of first entry into grade 9. So in that case, it almost seems like an 8th grader that would want to do that. Are they seeking, the question is, are they seeking another year of middle school athletic eligibility? Or are they wanting to go to 9th grade, but then be able to say, hey, I'm in 9th grade, but I get 5 years of high school if I want it? I don't know. I think all of those are things that got to be worked out. And I don't have those answers.
Because I think right now KHSAA says if you repeat a grade for any reason, especially at the middle school level, you're ineligible. But I didn't know if that would change.
Yeah, I think this is going to trump that. That's what I think.
Right.
But I don't know that, because it says some stuff like, retaking courses pursuant to this act shall not otherwise disqualify the student from eligibility. So that's what KHA was originally doing, was saying you can't do 8th grade again because you failed a bunch of classes. I think that's what they were saying. And then also play sports again or do some other extracurricular. Well, I guess KHSAA is all athletics, but yeah. But I think this one is saying you can, I think.
Okay. And it's just, like I said, I think it's easier at the high school level and the middle school level to figure out how that, maybe that's just me as a middle school person. It's just.
I agree. And I think it gets muddy, and it gets muddy quick, and it is complicated, but I think, again, on behalf of students, we got to work through the complications. That's my opinion on that part.
Okay,
all right. The other one is HB 258. It's 117 pages. I'm not going to reference it. I'll just try to answer questions about it. But this is, so if you've been around Kentucky for a while, you talked about retirements and pensions, and you've heard all the terms that the former governor used when 3-4 years ago, they tried to change the pension laws, and it was eventually blocked, or I think it got passed and it got ruled unconstitutional. So we are, those of us that have been in the system for a while, even though we might be in different tiers, there are different tiers out there right now, if you didn't know that. So those of us that are like some year we're in a tier. Those of us that are in a different years are in a tier. And I think in 2008 and going forward, that's another tier. I don't know if is anybody on here that joined education after 2008? David, is that right? Am I right in that you all are in a different tier than the rest of us?
Yes.
So there's some different requirements about what you contribute and all that stuff. But all that said, everybody on this screen that's an educator is in a defined benefit plan. And that was the big hang up a few years back, was that they were trying to change the pension thing to a defined contribution plan. And it maybe was even going to affect people who had been in the system for a while. So that was the big ask from educators, was not that, I mean, we get that at some point we may need another tier and it might have to become a defined contribution just because the math is not working out for the retirement system, but we didn't want to change in midstream. That was the big thing. So in this new HB 258 that got passed the other day, this was introduced by Ed Massey out of Northern Kentucky, and Ed was a former school board member. So he's been working with Jim Flynn, Kentucky Association of School Superintendents Director, and the other K groups. And this 258 is, in essence, it has been passed for now. We'll see what the governor does with it. And it does create a new tier, and that tier begins on January 1st, 2022. So I'm not going to read this on this first page, line 5. Individuals who become non-university members of TRS on or after January 1st, 2022 shall be provided with a book. And the new thing is that they will be in a defined contribution plan. If you want more information on this, we can talk mathematics about it after the meeting. But what I'm telling you this for is, as you begin to recruit teachers, think about this, adding to your team down the road. New folks joining education are going to be in a different tier if they come after January 1st of next school year. So as I understand it, the people you're hiring this summer will be in the same tier that David Carmichael is in. That's the way I understand it, right? Okay. But as people start to ask, should I do education? Should I not? What's a defined contribution plan, et cetera? If you didn't, and sometimes I understand that you may not know, because only when you get like closer to retirement do you start paying attention to it. I mean, our first bunch of years of teaching, I had people who kept talking about the pension and this and that. I didn't know what they were talking about, and contribution or whatever. And then somebody finally showed me that I was putting in X% of my every paycheck into teacher retirement. I was like, oh, okay. And then they've raised it up over the years. So now we put in like 12.85%. Is that right? Okay, I see Jennifer nodding her head. So the new tier will do this. This is from Jim Flynn on the text. The new tier will pay a little more into the system. They'll put 14.75% in. So instead of 13%, they're going to put 15% in if you want round numbers. 9 of that will be for the foundation of the defined benefit. So they're helping pay our defined benefit down the road when we retire, I think. 2% is for the supplemental defined contribution plan, and 3.75% for retiree health insurance fund. And then the state will match that at 10.75%. So it won't be a full match, but the state will put in that for that person. What that means, when those people retire way down the road, and they will be affected by 2 things. They will have to teach 30 years, and they will have to be 57 years of age before they can retire with full benefits. So where we are 27 and, well, it's 27. We know that if we reach age 55, then they calculate your high 3 rather than your high 5, but we are 27. So Jim Flynn said they wanted to make this, they tried to keep it at 55, but just the other day when it went to the Senate floor, they amended it and took it from 55 to 57 and went back to the House, and the House went ahead and voted it through. And I asked Jim why, and he said, look, something's going to happen with a new tier. We just need to take the deal. I mean, in short, he just said, we should probably take the deal while it's on the table now, and it's probably as good as it's going to get. It's not going to get better than this a year from now, because this is going to keep coming up every year in legislature until we get a deal that creates a new tier, because they're not going to let it go otherwise. And so if somebody can explain this math, I think I get it, but you know how like when you learn something and then you have to be able to explain it to someone, you don't really know it until you can explain it. I can't quite explain it yet, but I think I understand it. Is by creating this new tier, eventually the system will be in better shape. Like unless we create a new tier, there's always going to be the chance that the system could run out of money. But in this new tier, they also agree to fund it, and it will always be funded to like a 90% level. And if it falls below, if you read line 25 here, if it falls below 90%, the board shall maintain that funding level. So it'll be like fully funded. You hear them talk about teacher retirement sometime, how we're like, the system is like 58% funded or 60% funded. This new tier will be fully funded. And by doing this, eventually, this sounds sort of morbid, but eventually all the people in the defined benefit side will eventually pass on. And so this will like get enough money so that all those people who are in any system before January 1st, 2022 will eventually stop collecting retirement benefits, or their family will stop collecting retirement benefits. Does that make sense? And then this one will kick in for those people going forward past 2022. We won't be worrying about that way down the road, but that's what'll happen. One more advantage of this plan, if you're trying to recruit new teachers, and this is important for new folks because they think differently than we do about retirement, is this is completely portable. Do you know what that means in terms of portability? Somebody want to answer that one?
Was that talking about taking it with you somewhere else, even out of state?
Yes, out of state or out of education. I think that like that they could just take their retirement plan and just take it with them. Right now, I think what we could do, I think we've always had the chance to take out our contributions, right? If we just said, hey, I'm out of education, I want my money back, but it means we're not going to get a retirement. And you have to be in a certain number of years to be vested in the system to know that you're going to get some in retirement. The state's going to. So I think in this new one, it's portable, which means they could take it with them. I don't know if it means they'd be able to take however their investment has grown to, because the state's putting money in too. So I don't know if it means if I put in $20,000 over 5 years and the state has matched it to X% and my fund has grown to $38,000 and I leave, is the whole 38,000 portable? I'm not sure about that, but I know that I would think that maybe that's what that means, but I'm not sure. But it is portable. That's what they keep saying. That's a new attractive thing for this, because you're going to have to tell people that it's still a good system, but it is a defined contribution and it's still worth coming into. And yes, they're going to have to put 15% in, which is going to be it's going to be a hard sell, but that it's still a great retirement for them down the road. And the only thing different is they won't have a defined benefit. It won't be able to say like it'll be exactly this amount based on these factors. It'll be based on how the account has grown over time, is the way I understand it. A lot more information you might want. That's the summary. Talk to Jim Flynn if you want the detailed version of that.
I can jump in. Bart, I want to add one thing, and this came up a year or two ago when we were getting into some of this, and you know it happens every year, like you said. But one thing you might, and I think this is an important point to keep in mind. If you know somebody who may want to be a teacher, and maybe they may just be like a sophomore or junior in college and be a ways from completing their degree, and I think I'm right on this, you might want to encourage them to sub at least one day. Because I'm looking on the TRS website right now and it says any person providing part-time or substitute teaching services that are the same or similar to those teaching services provided by full-time certified teachers shall be a member of the retirement system. And I know what came up a time or two before when they were talking about changing this is get somebody in there, let them sub a day or two and get in the old system. I think I'm right on that. You may want to check, but I mean, here's the thing. If you hire somebody next fall and they're going to start January 1st and they finish classes the first week of December, you still got 2 weeks of school and you're probably going to need to sub those last 2 weeks. Get them on in there, let them sub a day or two. And as far as I understand it, they'll be on our system, or at least the current system, and they'll get a little bit more of this old benefit rather than the new system. So Bart's shaking his head. I think he may be in agreement here, but just something I thought of. I think if you've got a friend or a future employee who's going to go into education, I mean, even if they have to skip classes for a day and come in and sub one time, I think it'd be worth it to them financially to consider that.
That's great. It's a great point, Dan. You just gotta make sure about hire dates, and you never wanna give somebody misinformation on this stuff. That's the hard part. Whenever somebody ever asks me about retirement, anything, I always give them one of those like lawyer disclaimers, like, look, you need to confirm anything I'm saying with TRS, but this is what I believe to be the case. I would always do that with your teachers also, so that you don't have a teacher down the road saying, well, my daggone principal told me this, and they're wrong, and they messed me over. So I always say, like, I'm going to give you my understanding of it. You should confirm this with TRS after we get done talking and make sure that that's accurate. That's all I got, Kelly. There's other legislation, but those are the two I wanted to touch on. Two is about all I can take.
It may be all the group can take as well, but I appreciate you sharing that, because I think that those are very important for our administrators to have some understanding around if they're questioned, or just to be able to share out some information with their folks. So thank you very much for sharing. You all know that you can reach out at any time if you have questions that come to your mind, okay, after today, whether it be about assessment, accountability, accommodations, you can shoot those to me and I will try to get the answers for you to provide you that guidance. If you have any additional questions, just feel free to reach out. Like I said, you can get your ELA credit by completing the Google form. I appreciate you all taking your time to join into the network meeting. I think they are beneficial in just helping us to network. This is our last meeting for this school year, but I will be sharing new dates for next year with you. And so I'm just happy to be here today, happy to be able to provide you with some additional support. And if you all don't have anything else, then I'm just going to wish you a great rest of your day and just let us know how we can support you.
Kelly, I just want to say thanks to you. You've had some good meetings this year. It's unfortunate sometimes attendance has been up and down. I know people have got things going on, but you had some good meetings, and so we'll try to help you get the word out, and you all do the same to your colleagues, and let's get more people involved, because I think we've got a lot of good information to offer next year for our networks.
Yeah. And
Assistant
Dan,
principals too. We got that assistant principal network as well. So make sure, it'll sound like I took the words out of your mouth, but yeah, we need to make sure to promote that, get your partners in on these when we have them. Do we have one more coming up, Kelly, or we're done with them?
No, we're finished up for this school year. Yeah. And we'll just start again in the fall. So, okay. But yeah, if you have any, ideas or topics that you would like us to hit when fall rolls around, just send me an email and let me know, or add it in that Google form. And because I do review that, and I take what I get from you all to build the upcoming meetings. So anything you have an interest in, please reach out and let me know. So, all right. So if no one has anything else, then I'm going to say, feel free to jump off at any time. Have a good rest of the day. Don't get too wet, all those kind of good things. See you soon.